أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه أجمعين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم. من يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Indeed, all praise for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him, we seek His assistance, and we seek His forgiveness. We seek blessings from Allah for the evil of ourselves and out of our own wicked deeds. Whomsoever Allah guide, none can misguide. Whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide, there is no guide or protector for them. I bear witness that none has the right to worship except for Allah, and that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his last and final messenger sent to mankind. Inshallah ta'ala, I want to try to be brief. I know I say that a lot of times and doesn't always turn out that way. And I have a lot, and I'm just being honest, right, about it because it's a lot, and I don't really like to, I don't want to jam everything together and then, 20 or 30 minutes and then we walk out the door, because believe me, I can tell you that I've, tried to have a very condensed or very terse or very concise khutbah, and have the subject nature very, very, right there, right, literally like right in front of your face, and mention something within the last part of the khutbah, and then after we offer the salah, taslim, I remember standing by the door, and I asked the person a question. I said, "What was the khutbah about?" Or I said, "Well, what was that dua that was mentioned? Or what ayah was that?" And I know that, sometimes I might say something over and over again. And I literally, for maybe about 2 months now, I've been giving the same khutbah over and over again, the same thing, mentioning the same ayah. Because truly, this is a miracle of the Quran, right? This is our deen. It's repetitive. It's repetitive. We say the same thing every day, inshallah ta'ala. We say the same thing every day, but are we listening to what we're saying? Are we responding to the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? We raise our hands in dua and we call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we continuously ask for things, but are we responding to His call? So, because I don't want to go off on a tangent because all of that was not even supposed to, I'm wasting time. And this is what happens, mashallah. So, which brings me to this thing, right? This thing is something that occurred maybe, I think, back in 2013. In 2013, I met this brother, and this brother came to me, and he said he had a dream. And the dream that he had, and I've actually talked about his dream before here, but the reminder benefits the believer, and it's important for us to understand and be able to take something from that. But again, this is about the miracle of the Quran, because I don't want to leave that out there. The miracle of the Quran is that we keep feeding from the same thing over. It's like a fountain that doesn't stop giving life and giving water or giving light. It's continuously, the bounty is always there for us to go back to it and receive something from it. And each and every one of us can receive exactly what we need from it. This is the reason why sometimes you go to Jumu'ah and you say, man, it's as if the Khateeb was talking directly to me. As if you ever had that saying, I needed to hear that. That I needed to be there for that. I didn't even know I was going to come to this masjid, but mashallah, alhamdulillah, I needed that. How did he know that I needed to know? This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the qadr of Allah. It was for you. It's all been for us. Bi-ithbillah. By the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So without going off on a tangent again, let me continue. So this brother, and I don't want to, it's important to understand everything, but let me just try to be, again, as concise as I possibly can be. Because I always leave things out. And I'm trying to, be better at this. Inshallah. So the brother, back in 2013, the brother came to me and he mentioned something, he was troubled about a dream that he had. And it wasn't so much the concepts of the dream, but he was trying to understand the dream. He said this dream meant something, but he really didn't understand it yet. So I was like, well, I said, we don't think about it, right? Because we know it's from the sunnah that, if we have a dream, we say, hey, I had this dream. We talk about our dreams, right? Our good dreams or dreams that we think there's something in it. And it's permissible for us to interpret each other's dreams. The Sahaba did it. But also some used to ask, has anyone seen a dream? And they would talk about their dreams and they would try to interpret these things, right? So the brother, in the sense of the sunnah, he came to someone he trusted, i.e. being myself, and he said, I had this dream. And this dream really has about 3 parts to it. But I only tell the one part to it because this is kind of something that was between the two. The first part, it really goes, it's pretty deep. The first part is real deep. But the second part is where, the meat of the story is at. So what happened in the dream, he said that, he was in a dream and as he explained it very, very clearly, the way that he explained it was as if it was like watching a movie, right? As some dreams are. But it was like, it was in the third person, meaning that he was seeing himself, right? So it was as if he was watching himself, going through all these motions instead of seeing everything in the first person where you're looking at everything and you can't see yourself. So it was in the third person and he's watching it and he says that, he kind of lifted his head up from a table and he said he was in a place. And I'm going to try to get through this because there's a lot to get through in this story, but just bear with me, please. So he was in a restaurant and he said that he could hear music playing and things like that, restaurant music. I guess they have that sometimes in some restaurants. I can't remember. I haven't been out in a long time. So there was some type of I guess light music or whatever playing, and he was sitting there and he could see people and he was alone by himself. And as he was sitting there, he seen that there was a menu in front of him and he could see the menu. So he picked up the menu. He's like, oh man, this place is nice. So he said, the place was real nice. The place was very, very nice, right? And he's looking. And there's all types of stuff going on. They serve alcohol there and things of that nature. He noticed all of this stuff. He picked up on all these different things as he's sitting there. So he picks it up, the menu, and he's looking at things on the menu. And as he's looking at the menu, he's bringing, people are bringing him dishes. So the waiter staff is bringing him plates of food, right? Things that he didn't even order. He didn't even order these things, but they're coming to him anyway. Right? So he's kind of looking at stuff and saying, oh, this looks nice. And next thing you know, it's coming. And he looks at something else. This looks nice. So this is what's happening to him repeatedly. So he says that first, they brought over some kind of a salad or something like that. And he said, nah, I didn't order that. He said, you don't want that. So they took it away. And then the next day, they brought over like this, something else. I can't remember exactly what it was. And it was like, quickly as they brought it away, he said, I said, I didn't order this. He said, I didn't order this. And then they bring him something, and he started to feel bad because he's noticing that as he's looking at the menu, they're bringing it to him. So he started to feel a little bit bad about him, telling him that he didn't want this stuff. So the next thing they brought him like a plate with rice on it or something. And it was things that he could recognize. He said, okay, I can eat this, right? And he noticed that it had in it it was like some type of crickets, and they were dead. Dead crickets was on top of the food. And he was going to try to eat it because he felt bad about it. He said, well, maybe this is something they serve or whatever. He was going to eat it. And then he said, and then as he went to go, take and eat it, some of it started moving. So then some of them were alive. And then he was like, you know what? I can't do it. He said, nah, I don't want this neither. Right? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he dismissed this dish too. And then they brought out this dish. He said the rice was like gold. It was like a gold color. And he said there was a piece of meat that was like, he thought was beef, some kind of beef meat. And there was some chicken. And there was all of this like, he called it white sauce, right? And it was all over the rice, over the chicken. And he said that when he ate it, it was the best thing he ever tasted in his life. He said he'd never had a meal or tasted something as good as this. And he says, as he was eating it, he thought to himself, he said, I got to get some more of this. He said, I said, I don't know what this is. He ate everything. And he said, I need some more of this. And it was something inside the sauce that he said that was like, the sauce was really, really, really good. He called the waiter, he said, man, this is good. This is, man, he's telling the waiter, like, this is so good. And then he tells him, he said, listen, let me get some more. Bring me some more of this. He wasn't even done what he was eating, but he knew he had room for some more. And so when the waiter came over, the waiter took his finger and he's like, what, you want some more? He said, you want some more of this? And he stuck his finger into his food. So the brother was like, what just happened? And then the waiter stuck his finger in his mouth, tasted and said, we ain't got no more of that. And so like he sat there, he was like, what just happened? He was getting this amazing service in the beginning. Everything was good. And then all of a sudden, he's like confused. But he said that even in that confusion, he still wanted more. He still was like, can you go back there and get me some more food? And he says that suddenly he was able to see the kitchen. And he was able to see what they were back there doing in the kitchen. And he said, now the waiter went back to the kitchen to bring him more chicken. He said, there's more chicken, but you ain't gonna get no more of this. So he said, all right, bring me the chicken then. So the brother said that he went into one of these freezers, pulled out some frozen chicken and literally threw it into the microwave. Threw it in there. And then he brought it back out so he could see him. And he brought it back and said, then he woke up out of the dream. Now, what's a part of this dream is that he was what occurred was that he was in a classroom. And when he was in this classroom, there was, I have to tell you this because it's important to understand the dream, right? Outside from the other points that I'll get to in a second. But inside the classroom that he was in, this is where it began at, in this classroom that he was in. In the classroom, the teacher was teaching something. The correct answer was C. And there was two other people that was there with them saying these answers, but they had to explain their answers, right? So the people that were wrong were trying to explain their answers and was incorrect. And what the brother said was that, can't they see that this is obvious? This is what he thought to himself. This is obvious, like the answer is C. So then he was asked to explain his answer. And this ended up taking him to the dream, right? And then when he came out of the dream, he really was able to explain his answer. Because this was the explanation was. So now he had a dream within a dream. So this happened in layers, right? So it seems like kind of absurd what this means, right? But this is the explanation that the brother gave to me. So now, not only did he ask me about his dream, but he was explaining it to me, right? He started to explain his dream to me. And he says, I think this about my dream and what it meant, because this would occur. So one of the things that he said was that, about inside the classroom was that, he didn't want the answer to be given to him. He didn't want the teacher to just tell him the answer. He wanted to be able to, find the answer. He didn't want the teacher to just tell him the answer. So he understood that on that part of the dream, that the dream was the answer to explaining what the answer was. You're right, but why are you right? And that was so it was a learning moment for him. So but he knew all of these things meant something. And what did it mean? It meant that, of course, when he was sitting at the table, this is what he said. He said that it meant to him, what he took from this dream was something that came strictly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Guidance straight from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How so? When he explained it, he used these three words: service, pleasure, and acceptance. This is what he said to me: service, pleasure, and acceptance, right? And he says that when he was sitting at the table, and in the beginning, when he looked at the menu, he was receiving all these things without even asking for. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us all these things without even asking for. Allah God continuously gives us things without even asking. Without even asking. And then he said that when the dishes was brought, and the one dish that looked like it was presentable and acceptable, he said this is how our deeds are sometimes. Sometimes our deeds are decent, right? Not the best, decent. And Allah sometimes he accepts these decent deeds, right? Even though we didn't perfect them. And he said that the crickets that was on that plate represented our sins. That even though we come with sins on us, these sins are dead, we made tawbah, but when we go back to committing those sins, they become alive again. And then it's rejected. And then he said, what was they said that golden dish that tasted so good was the best of our deeds. And that the same way that the person that was sitting at the table himself wanted more, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants more from us when we come with the best of our deeds, because he knows what our potential is. And then what happens is that what do? We become the best of Muslims during the month of Ramadan. And then what happens throughout the rest of the year? We turn back on our heels. He said that this was a representation of that when the waiter came over, the server, if he was the server, right? And he stuck his hand, and it's like, and he said this was a representation of how we offer our salat, how we are lazy in dua, how etc., etc., etc. As we can continuously go on and thinking about these things. And he mentioned all these things and said, well, that he would not have been able to see this except that he had read something. And this is something I never mentioned. He read something out of a book. And in this book, the book speaks about there's two kinds of looking. Some of us are familiar with this. Page 148 and Man in the Universe. Right. The book is sitting right over there. It should be below. Right here, Man in the Universe. A book that I highly recommend for any teenager, especially 13-year-old. You should have your child read it back to you. I should do it together. But on page 148, Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, may Allah have mercy on him, he talks about two kinds of looking. Now understand, believe this or not, but believe this, inshallah ta'ala. The gift of vision is amazing. And being able to truly recognize and see is very important to our existence, truly existence, right? Because there's people out here that's still in non-existence. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that you have people out here who are dead, but they're alive, right? Like the walking dead. What's wrong? Their hearts dead. They're blind. They can't see, but they can see. But they can't see. What is the reality of this? The reality of this is that you say, okay, how is it that somebody can reject belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How when things can be made clear and plain in front of them? What happened? Al-Isra al-Mi'raj, and I'll use this example. Al-Isra al-Mi'raj, what happened? What we have inside the seerah is that what? We know that Rasulullah made the night journey, and we know all the amazing miracles that occurred during that. Now, mind you, in the seerah, this was a time where Rasulullah was at a real low point. I mean, in sadness and grief. Khadija had just died. radiallahu anha, right? And he was going through a lot of persecution in Mecca. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him something. Now, mind you, this is the beginning of the call. So there's some things that Rasulullah didn't know, right? What do I mean by this? What he saw in Al-Isra al-Mi'raj was a very pivotal point in his iman, to boost his iman and to strengthen him in his call. So mind you, when he came back, if you look at the ahadith, you look at the seerah, when he came back, and who came to him? Abu Jahl. He says, like pretty much like what you got now, like what's going on now. You see Rasulullah in deep thought. Rasulullah said, well, you got anything else? They pretty much asked him, what has been revealed to you now? And Rasulullah said, yes. Right? He said, yes. And then he told him about where he went, where he been. And then Abu Jahl was like, oh man, right? And I'm putting this in our terms now, right? Like, oh man, like hold on. You saying you went to Jerusalem and last night you back right now. He said, if I call people over here, you gonna say the same thing that you just said. This is what he said, so many words. Look it up. So he called people over. So the Rasul sallallahu can tell them what he just told him, right? Abu Jahl. The Rasul sallallahu, right? Because mind you, now when he's thinking about this and thinking about he has to tell me, he's thinking like, really like I know what I saw, I know where I went, right? Of course. But imagine trying to tell somebody this. And when I think about this story, just for a second, I think about how many times when we as Muslims are in certain places and we need to make wudu, and you have some embarrassment about putting your foot in that sink. Or explain it to somebody that you make istinja and why you make istinja and how. Of course, people go through a lot of different things. We say, oh yeah, we believe in jinns. We believe in the existence of this and that. You feel sometimes way some people feel uncomfortable with discussing such things. Or wiping over your wiping over your whatever your foot gear is that's waterproof. It seems a little strange. People look at you like, what is he doing? Why is he doing it? I remember the first time I went to the airport, I had on cuffs. They were confused, they didn't know what to do. And I said, y'all never seen nobody come to the airport with cuffs on? Philadelphia and Chicago, I was like blown away that they didn't know what that was. They didn't know how to search it. They didn't actually take it off because they didn't want to offend me. But I just went to told them what it was. But it was something unusual. But there's a lot of things. You need to offer salah. Of course, we got safety concerns and things of that nature. You find a place to offer salah, do you do it? Do you have a musalla sitting inside of your car when you're traveling? Do you keep water bottles inside of your car for istinja and for wudu? Are you ashamed? But Rasulullah told the people exactly what he saw. And then in one narration, when he was describing what he saw in Jerusalem, they would say, well, describe this section or this part or this and that. And Rasulullah couldn't remember some details. And then Rasulullah was being able to see those details so that he could tell them exactly what it was. But what happened? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Because then they said, they'll go run to the closest person to you and say, hey, you still believe in Rasulullah? He said this. He said this and then he did that. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq said, well, if he said he did, then I believe him. And then when they asked him, how do you such a thing? He said, I believe in something more comprehensive than that, incomprehensible than that. I believe that he received the revelation from his Lord. Something far greater than this. This is a small matter. Very small matter. But in this book, page 148, page 148. It's a very, very, 2 more minutes because I don't want to forget this. I already forgot so much. There are 2 kinds of looking. Inside the book, Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that he mentions the ayah, and this is the reason why I couldn't see it. And this ayah is خلق السماوات بغير أمد ترونها. And it says that he has created the heavens without supports that you can see. In the hadith that Hassan Gharib is in the collection of Ibn Tirmidhi, where Rasul he says in this hadith that narrated by Abu Dhar, Rasul said, "Indeed, I see what you do not see, and I hear what you do not hear." And then he starts to mention that the heavens are moaning, right? And that they have a right to moan. And said that there is no spot the size of 4 fingers in them, except that there is an angel placing his forehead in prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he tells us, by Allah, if you knew what I knew, then you would laugh little and you would cry much. And you would not taste the pleasures of your women in the beds, and you would go out beseeching Allah. And then Abu Dhar al-Ghafari, he said that, and I wish that I was a fallen tree. A little moment ago, I had mentioned that, there's things that the disbelievers will never be able to see because of their disbelief. And there's things that will be incomprehensible to them. Now, some people make this excuse, right? From this is what some of the people who call themselves Christians, they say that we will never understand the Trinity. You're absolutely right. We will never understand the Trinity at all. Absolutely, you're totally right about that because you don't even understand the Trinity at all. So it's amazing. So this whole notion that we say about disbelievers is because people have trouble, and some of us have some trouble discerning some things, really seeing things for what they are. Things are put right in front of us, and we even have things that we say right out of our own mouths. This dua is powerful. Dua is very, very powerful, especially when you have a firmness in your dua, right? A firmness in your dua. And it's important to understand things and put things into perspective. So I don't want to forget this. This is important. If you don't have this book, and I don't get any benefit from this except some ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, maybe. And this book is very, very good. And there's a lot of information inside of it. And this is just one of the gems from one page of it. And this is from Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala. So page 148. 2 kinds of looking. So, and I only did the first part because this really is what he concentrates on. And in the above and similar verses, looking has 2 senses. There is a looking with the eye, the external organ, by which one may see, for instance, the blue sky, its stars, its height and vastness. In such vision, man is equal to other species. And so it is not the vision that man is exhorted to practice. In the other sense, looking is to go beyond the first external vision to see with the mind's eye, so that the heavens gates are open to the observer. He wanders among its territories and lands and associates with its angels. It is then that the gates are open for him, one by one, until his mind's journey carries him to the throne of the compassionate, where he envisions its huge and great size, its majesty, glory, and elevation. He envisions the 7 heavens and the 7 earths, whose mass is compared to the thrones, like a ring to a desert. He envisions the angels circling circumambulating the throne with their hymns of praise and glorification of the Lord, rising in chorus. He sees with the mind's eye the commandments of the Lord descend from above, managing the world's directing the almighty soldiers, whose swarms no one can count but their Lord and King. He realizes how directives descend to determine the reviving multitudes of creatures and the perishings of other multitudes, the honoring of some and the suffering of others, the enthroning of someone and the dethroning of another, the transporting of a blessing from one place to another place, and the fulfilling of all sorts of needs. In all their variety and abundance of rescue, the healing of the invalid, the saving of someone stricken with disaster, the forgiveness of a sin, the resolution of a crisis, the supporting of a persecuted one, the guiding of the lost one, the educating of the ignorant one, the reclamation of the escaped slave, the safety of the terrified one, the succor of the succor seeker, and the empowering of a feeble person, the support of a distressed one, the help of someone who is handicapped, the revenge on an oppressor, the stopping of an aggression, all decrees towards the establishment of justice, sympathy, wisdom, and mercy, covering all corners of the world. No call distracts him. No call distracts him from another call. The great succession of pleas and petitions do not confuse him, no matter how numerous, diverse, or simultaneous. He does not complain at the insistence of the insistence, and his bountiful bestowings do not decrease the riches of his treasure by a fraction. For there is no God but he, the proud, the wise. And then he goes on to say that conceiving is the believing heart. The believing heart is prostrated in the presence of the compassion, bending in awe of him, subservient to his might, bound by his dignity. It will prostrate in front of the King, the true, the clear, a prostration that is never interrupted until the day of Yom Kippur. All this the heart does while it's still in its place at home and not leaving its residence, which is the most marvelous wonder of the Lord's and overwhelming occurrence. Blessed be the journey, a most rewarding trip, lifting the human and blessing his life and rewarding him amply and ensuring good consequences. It is the trip that revives the souls and wins the key to happiness, fills the minds and hearts with peace, not born with hardships like other trips. So the brother said he read that, and then he had a dream. And then he explained his dream. Because he said when he read that he didn't really understand it. But after his dream, he was able to understand exactly what that meant. So Allah responds to us. What are we listening to how he responds? And what is he actually telling us individually? There's something that we all need individually and specially. And it's something that we all ask for individually and specially. And it's the same thing that we all ask for. We say the same thing. Hopefully we mean the same thing in goodness. We also sometimes forgive us of our sins, past, present, future, open, hidden, apparent. I apologize for being long-winded, but I always forget something. I didn't want to forget that today. So please bear with me. And inshallah ta'ala, after we finish the salat, we're going to play Salat al-Khateeb. Brother's going to lead us in Salat Janazah. I can't remember the brother's name, so please just tell us. I'd like to know his name in particular. And the reason why I'll do this is because, like this, is because it's important that when people bring us a reminder about somebody that passed, because somebody may be us, and it's always a blessing and mercy to have someone that actually knows this person, dearly, to lead us in the Salah and also mention things about this person, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote this for this person. And inshallah ta'ala, if you can, please remain and fill the ranks up so we can give the brothers his rights and his duties after we pray. Salat al-Jumu'ah, inshallah ta'ala. And mention his name too, inshallah ta'ala.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.